So good to be back with you once again on the India development debate right here on ET Now. I'm Supriya Srinath, and this is, of course, a budget special. Election 2019 will be fought on the farmland. No surprise then if agriculture gets the top billing when Piyush Goyal presents the last budget of the Modi government come Friday. That farmers are an unhappy lot is well documented in the recent assembly elections in the Hindi heartland, where the ruling BJP suffered a big electoral reversal. ET Now has been reporting on how the government is working overtime to dole out a rehab package to win over the farming community. There have been reports of a one-time payout of up to 10,000 rupees for each farmer family, while the other option is being weighed is a 4,000 rupee subsidy per acre of cultivable land. But that would come in the way of a big bang relief package, and that is a sorry state of fisc. On the India development debate this evening on this budget special, we put the spotlight on the farm sector ahead of that crucial union budget. I'm Supriya Srinath, and joining me on the show are very eminent guests. We've got Yogendra Yadav, founder and national president, Swaraj India political party, who joins us. I've got Mr. Siraj Hussain, former agriculture secretary in the government of India, and Devinder Verma, food and agriculture policy expert. Thank you very much, each one of you, for being with us. And Mr. Yadav, if I may begin with you, we just had last week when Radha Mohan Singh said that the budget will be dictated by the farmers. You had the finance minister, Mr. Jaitley, say that if something is done for the farmers, the markets will understand. It's a rational and not a populist move. Before we get to the semantics, before we get to the basics, are you in some way relieved of the fact that at least the debate on budget and farmers has moved away from just a blanket agri waiver, loan waiver, and is really talking about some sort of a agri relief package?
That certainly is a great achievement of the farmers' movement of the last 2 years or so. When farmers have come on one single platform, they have managed to shape the agenda. And yes, after nearly 3 decades, farmer is at the center of national political stage. And that is reflected in the discussions on the budget as well. Although I would say that at the moment, the discussion is still about some relief, some palliative, some little thing to keep the farmer quiet. We have still not progressed to something which would really seriously address the problem of the farmers. Remember, two pieces of legislation are pending before the parliament, both proposed by farmers associations. One which is about guaranteed remunerative prices, second about indebtedness, freedom from indebtedness for the farmers. I would take the government seriously, or the opposition seriously, when they take these two things up in the budget session. And now that we know that the constitution of this country can be amended within 48 hours, I suspect they can pass these bills as well if they really want it. So yes, there is some positivity. At the same time, not enough is being done right now.
Okay, not enough is being done right now. The positive thing is that at least the plight of the farmers is finally catching the fancy of policymakers, and it isn't just one loan waiver that's being talked about. At least one is looking at a relief package of sorts. But Mr. Siraj Hussain, getting down to the specifics, there's plenty of speculation. We've been reporting right here on ET Now, a relief package that could cost about 1.5 lakh to 2.5 lakh crore rupees to the exchequer. Some say it will be like the Raitu Bandhu, some say it could be like the Kalia scheme. What do you believe is a solution that works pan-India? There is talk of 10,000 rupees per farm family. There is talk of 4,000 for cultivable agriculture. But, then the question comes about tenant farmers and all of that. What do you think is really going to work and could perhaps be the focus area of the budget?
Actually, I wrote an article in the Economic Times in which I clearly mentioned that compared to loan waivers, direct investment support is a better option because it gives space to farmers to plan, and then it is crop neutral. Having said this, I must reiterate that different regions of India require different interventions, and one common way of disbursing money to people directly into farmers' accounts is not really going to help. For example, in Punjab and Haryana, where we see the water levels going down year after year, this 1,500 rupees or 8,000 rupees, what is being discussed, per acre is not really going to solve the problem of water. Similarly, the farmers who are affected by drought in Marathwada, etc., farmers who are not able to sell their old animals, their male cattle, they are not really going to be benefited hugely by this. It will be a palliative, it will create good atmosphere for some time, but I think in the medium to long run, much more needs to be done for farmers by way of investment in agriculture rather than the Sops.
Okay, give me a minute because I want to go across to Mr. Devinder Sharma and just to point out some figures here, sir. Last year, the government budgeted nearly 32,000 crore rupees for the Fasal Bima Yojana, interest subsidy for short-term credit, price support scheme and Krishi Sanchar Yojana, just to name some of the things that the budget was talking about. This was about a 5% rise from the previous year. Perhaps the intent is there and politically that intent serves a purpose, but the question is, where is the failure? Is the failure that they're not thinking enough? Is the failure really on the conceptualization of the policy? Or does it all crumble down at the execution implementation level?
I think the failure lies in assessing or finding out or thinking as to what is the real solution for agriculture. You know, you said that 5% increase in the budget last year. That has been happening periodically, but that's not going to address the real issue. Just imagine 52% population and you have only less than 2% of your budget going for agriculture. And that shows the lack of investment or the shortfall in investment that agriculture requires. But more importantly, I think agriculture has now come into center stage and the focus of political parties is now on agriculture. And I think this is a very positive development. But when I look at the palliatives being thrown at, I'm a little worried because if you remember, if you just see this 10,000 rupees packet that we talk about, what does it come down to per acre, you know, or per month? If you just look at it, 10,000 rupees per acre, but if you just see 800 to 1,000 rupees per month, I mean, if this is the kind of deprivation that exists in agriculture, I think we should all be worried about. And this kind of small kind of help that agriculture is being provided, which may ultimately come down to 1.8 lakh crore or so on every per year, but it's nothing. It's nothing. I don't think it's going to even be a kind of an effort that the country requires to move agriculture from the kind of crisis situation to a kind of a situation where farmers are at least a little happy and a little proud of agriculture. What we need is bigger reforms, which means basically ensuring how the farmers can be provided with an assured income package every month. Now, globally, farmers are in distress. This is because not only in India, this is primarily because of the volatility of markets that are hitting farmers everywhere in the world. And I think we are now realizing that there is no way out for agriculture unless you provide them an assured or guaranteed income every month. Now, this is something which is a big challenge, and I hope the new government would focus on this.
Okay, just give me a minute there, and I think everybody should focus on agriculture and the farming community. It's a pity in our times and world where it is not done. But Yogendra Yadav, before I go any further and talk about cold storage and things, infrastructure like that, the biggest change that one could have seen is how crops are procured, sold, and prices determined was through reforming the APMC Act. Do you believe that can still be done, and is that going to have any impact whatsoever? And just to go back in time, and I'm not the biggest fan of loan waivers, and we've had this discussion before, but the loan waiver that the UPA did, it did it in 2008, so there was enough time for that to roll out. Is there time for any of what the government does now to have a substantial impact on the ground before elections? At least that's the intention of why it's going to be done with.
Absolutely not. The simple point is 100 days before the term of your government is about to come to an end, how can you possibly announce something major which your successor will have to implement? This is simply not done in parliamentary democracy. You cannot have 6 budgets in 5 years. You presented a full-fledged budget in 2014, which was absolutely right because you came to power. But there was a vote on account presented by Congress government. That's exactly what should be done. And if there's any budget that should be presented on 1st of February, apart from vote on account, it is the outcome budget. This is the time for Modi government to say, okay, We've done this much for the farmers for the last 5 years, and this is what it has resulted in. I want to know, for example, how much of farmers' income has gone up in the first 3 years of the 6-year mission. Remember, they were going to double the farmers' income in 6 years. I want to know on 1st of February how much has been achieved in the first 3 years. I want to know why is it that farmers' suicide figures have disappeared from this country after 2016. I want the latest figure. I want to know in terms of prices, which you mentioned. There was this grand PM Asha scheme. So now please tell me, out of this grand scheme which you had announced, which you said was historic, what was the actual procurement? And did farmers manage to receive MSP even in one single commodity throughout this country? Please answer such questions. And also I would like to know, why is it that cattle prices have fallen throughout the country? Why is it that cattle economy has been destroyed? So 1st of February to my mind should be a day to give outcomes, to provide a report on what has been done. It is not a day to make fresh and grand announcements. I do not know if it's legal or constitutional, but it is definitely against the spirit of democracy. And I can tell you, voters are smart enough to see through this. Whatever, in my experience as cephalogist in my previous birth, no matter what a government does 100 days before the election, people don't look at it. No one takes it seriously. I was in Maharashtra day before yesterday, and farmers were saying, where there is a huge sugarcane areas pending, farmers were saying, इन्होंने हमारी नोटबंदी की है, हम इनकी वोटबंदी करेंगे. That is what is going to happen.
No, absolutely. And I agree with you. Will it have an impact on the ground is the big question, and should it be done in a vote on account budget? But let me go across to Mr. Siraj Hussain, and we can't not talk about agri infrastructure, sir. Just to give a sense to our viewers here, the total food grain production in the country in fiscal year 18 was at 275.68 million tons. This year, it's going to be 19 million tons, more than the average period between 2012 and 2016 and all of that. Our cold storages around the country are though crumbling. People believe the procurement is an issue, but whether it's potato or sugarcane, the infrastructure is not in place. Do you believe the large part of the agri budget needs to move away from the palliatives that you spoke about and really focus on building robust infrastructure for our agriculture? Cold storages being one of them, godowns being the other, and things like that.
You are very correct. Actually, when Green Revolution came to Punjab and Haryana, the government of India set up the Food Corporation of India, and substantial money was invested in creation of infrastructure in the form of mandis, roads, godowns, etc. Now, as far as the FCI's godowns are concerned for central pool stock of food grains, we have created about 15 million tons of storage capacity from between 2010 and now. So for central pool stocks of wheat and rice, there is not really a problem except in some states in eastern India. However, for perishables, the infrastructure for processing and storage is lacking, and actually the government faces some kind of dilemma there. I have been Secretary Food Processing and I must share it with your viewers, and the dilemma is that most of the subsidies for food processing go to richer classes, the business community, and these subsidies do not flow to farmers directly. So there is always this discussion that the subsidy for setting up cold chain infrastructure is going to business classes, and the farmers then depend on the business classes, the business groups, for storing their products. As a result of this discrepancy, the government has not really been able to make up its mind how much money it needs to invest in food processing. I keep saying that the budget of the Ministry of Food Processing is abysmal, and we wrote an article last year in which we said that Madhya Pradesh spent some 786 crores loss on onion procurement and sale, and its total budget on food processing was 15 crores.
Right, right. Give me a minute, sir. I do want to go to Devinder Sharma, and I think you're absolutely right. As far as infrastructure is concerned and the moral dilemma of the government to really focus and give it to the deserving people and not the rich class. But Mr. Sharma, I also want to talk about credit, because no discussion on agriculture can be complete without credit. I mean, yes, we are not talking about the loan waivers, but just for the benefit of our viewers again, in fiscal year 14, about 7.3 lakh was dispersed as agriculture credit. That number increased to 10 lakh, over 10 lakh crore in fiscal year 17. Do you believe the solution lies in reforming credit disbursal to agriculture to end the vicious nexus that gets created between money lenders, the informal economy that they borrow from? Do you believe, non-collateral loans and things like that? Do you believe there is a review that's required of the agri credit disbursal than just to look at waiving of loans when the situation goes bad? Is there merit in that argument at all?
I don't know why whenever we want to reform agriculture, we talk of only providing more credit and in fact in a better way, and also saying that all bottlenecks are removed. Well, if you look at the kind of suicides that we have had in this country, 90% farmers or 95% farmers are dying because they are under debt. And that's because of the kind of credit system that we have evolved as far as agriculture is concerned. One Punjab farmer recently committed suicide, and he tied his 5-year-old son and jumped into the canal. And then he left behind a note saying that I know I have a debt of 10 lakh rupees and my son would not be able to repay back all through his life. Now, if that's the kind of situation that exists in agriculture, I think what we need to do is to pull people out of this credit policy into a policy where farmers get income. Now, we are depriving farmers of the income and we are loading farmers with more credit. Karje pe karja, karje pe karja, karje pe karja. I think that's not the way forward. We need to provide farmers with more income in his hand. He knows how to take credit. But I think that's where we are lacking. We think in agriculture, the only solution is go on providing them more credit, go on providing more credit, which means you are pushing them into a bigger debt spiral, which is not the way forward. I think the time has come that we should move people out of this credit business and bring them into a place or into a kind of a system where farmers are able to realize the rightful income that they deserve. So we deprive farmers of the rightful income and then we give them more credit. I don't think that's the way forward. We will have to now evolve a system where farmers get his income first, and then of course he would know where to get the credit from whenever he needs it.
No, absolutely no denying that. In fact, I think marginal farmers from the bulk of farm population and their expenditure is obviously more than income, and very often this money that is actually borrowed is borrowed for non-farming expenditure. But Yogendra Yadav, this is a little bit of an out-of-box idea that some people have put on the table, and it's only fair that I ask someone like you for his opinion on this. Just like there used to be a railway budget, is there a case for a separate agriculture budget? Given the number of people that are employed there, given that not one single budget can focus on agriculture and come up with the solutions that it needs, to put agriculture, to pump prime the rural sector, do you believe there is perhaps a need for, and this will also lend the sector more voice, perhaps more credence?
I think that's a good idea, not because agriculture budget by itself can do any magic, because you give about 50,000 crore rupees for agriculture. If you want, you can separate those 50,000 crore rupees and present as a separate budget. It would make no difference. But the reason why I think it's a good idea is that it would remind the country, it's about optics. It would remind the country that farmers exist, that they are a critical part of our economy, that we need to give an account to the nation. And I think if you have a separate farmers budget, no finance minister or no agriculture in this ministry of this country would have the courage to present a budget with just 50,000 crore rupees there. That would automatically go up to 1 lakh crore rupees, or lakh or a half crore rupees, because there would be accountability. Although agriculture is principally a state subject and much of the expenditure should come from the state budget, but we know the reality of Indian federalism. All the responsibilities are with the states, all the income is with the center. So it is a good idea Something like a farmer's budget is a good idea, a farmer's income commission is a good idea. And I think the point that Mr. Devinder Sharma is making again and again, that is the heart of the matter, which is the focus should be on farmers' income. Let's think about everything through the issue of farmers' income. Let's think of the budget from that point of view. Let's look at the question of loan and loan waiver from that point of view. Let's look at the question of prices from that point of view. But farmers' income should be the prism through which we look at everything. That is what would give us solutions.
No, fair point indeed. And Mr. Hussain, would like you to come into that point, and I'm glad at least Mr. Yogendra Yadav finds some amount of merit in that argument. The other argument that's being made, and I don't know if it's really going to work in India like it did in a lot of South Asian countries, was a push towards contract farming. And could that be the answer? The production costs and much of the logistics perhaps get sorted out by things like that. But is our agriculture ripe for a solution like that?
Actually, a lot of contract farming already takes place. For example, in Punjab, the average operational holding is about 3.7, 3.6 hectares, while in UP and Bihar it is less than 0.5 hectare. A lot of landowners lease their land to other people in Punjab and they cultivate the land. But there are no written documents. Actually, the previous government of Punjab had enacted an act for leasing of land, but the rules were never notified. Then this government, the current government, in the Niti Aayog, circulated a draft leasing law, but no state government, as far as I know, has enacted any serious law and rules. Now, the difficulty is that, we seem to be very keen on this kind of law, but when we talk to industry and the farmers, they don't seem very keen. In our interactions organized by FICCI and CII, I did not find any enthusiasm among the industrialists in leasing, etc. They are not very keen to lease land because, you see, dealing with farmers, one has to acknowledge, is also not very easy. The sugar industry is realizing that, and almost every year we see dharnas and bandhs, etc., due to delayed payments and things. So it is not easy to deal with farmers' organizations because of very large numbers and enormous problems associated with the sector.
Okay, very quickly, Mr. Sharma, given the dependence on irrigation, and this is something that I think data proves that every time temperatures rise by 1 degree Celsius, farmer incomes would fall by 6.2% in the Kharif season and 6% during the Rabi in unirrigated areas, and there is data that proves this. Given the dependence on Indian agriculture on weather pattern, how can one get over this? Every year when the budget is announced and the finance minister makes this great announcement about money going to agriculture and irrigation projects, and how it's going to be more focused this year, how it's going to be smaller irrigation projects that will be funded, and tables are thumped. But what is perhaps a more pragmatic way to deal with this?
Well, there is no denying that irrigation has a very important role to play, and India, of course, is one of the I would say one of the big players as far as irrigation, the area under irrigation is concerned globally. I think India and China, they both match each other as far as the area under irrigation is concerned. But having said that, we still need to expand irrigation. But let me still make it clear, we somehow intend to pass on the burden of providing farmers the real income by shifting the focus to the investment measures like irrigation and so on. I am not saying irrigation is not important, but please let's be very clear. Irrigation has a role to play. Yes, let's invest in that. But at the same time, we cannot ignore the income part of it. The income that a farmer gets out of agriculture or even out of irrigated agriculture. One example I have been giving number of times is look at Punjab. Punjab, 98% assured irrigation, which means every field is irrigated in Punjab, and it has the highest productivity in the world as far as cereal crops are concerned, wheat, paddy and maize, highest productivity in the world, and yet Punjab has become a hotbed of farmer suicides. From year 2000 to 2017, 16,600 suicides happening in Punjab. And this is an area where 98% area is under assured irrigation. So all I'm trying to say is, yes, we need to expand irrigation, but let's look beyond irrigation to see how to provide farmers the rightful income. Whenever a farmer undertakes crop cultivation, he doesn't realize that he actually is cultivating losses. And look at the recent OECD report, which tells us that since 2000 to 2017, 45 lakh crore is what the farmers of India lost, because they were not given the rightful income. So that is where the focus has to be. That is where the thrust has to be. And there is no dearth of money in this country.
All right.
So that's where the focus should be brought back.
Right. Okay. You know, talking about no dearth of money, I will quickly give a last word to Mr. Yogendra Yadav. And sir, every time, you know, an assured income, every time a farm support scheme gets talked about, you have the rule book thrown at you by ratings agencies, by investors, markets begin to sulk. And there are, you know, there is fiscal credence that the government also has to keep up with. Of course, the government this time around is saying that markets should understand if it's a rational and not a populist move. But how tightrope a walk is this going to be to maintain fiscal discipline, to stick to the path of fiscal consolidation, and yet to give a lifeline and you know, an aiding hand of sorts to a sector that's in crying need of it?
My favorite poet in Hindi, Sarveshwar Dayal Saxena, has a beautiful line. He says, "Samarthya ichha ka dusra naam hai." It is all about political will. When you have political will, then you say it's rational. When you don't have political will, you say, where would the money come from? Strangely, all these questions do not come up when 7th Pay Commission is implemented. These questions do not come up when we have bank recapitalization, when we have loan restructuring for other sectors, when we have all kinds of gifts being given away, when we have these tax concessions being given to the rich. Somehow we never find time to discuss national fiscal problems. Suddenly fiscal problems come up when something has to be given to the farmers. That, to my mind, only shows lack of political will. One final point I wish to make. Let us stop searching for the solution. You know, when you have a patient who has had an accident, you don't ask questions of whether he needs his face to be stitched, or whether he needs his fracture to be healed, or whether inner injury should be attended to. You do them all. You simply have a sequence. You say, okay, I'll do this first because that's emergency. I'll attend to this after 2 hours. I'll attend to this after 2 days. So in the case of farmers, you need to do some emergency things. And those emergency things have to be about assured income guarantee by way of prices. And number 2, one-time loan waiver, which also paves the way for indebtedness from private money lenders as well. These 2 emergency measures should then lead to other things that we have been talking about: irrigation, not big irrigation, but yeah, better irrigation, better marketing, better processing, food producer organizations, ecological farming. All of that would be necessary. But when my patient is in ICU, no one should recommend to me that he should do pranayam. Yes, pranayam is very good, but I'll do it after the patient comes back from ICU. That's what we need to focus right now. Unfortunately, the time for this government to do anything is out. Now the voter is fed up. This has proven to be the most farmer-unfriendly government in the history of India. And that's what the voters are going to give their verdict on.
Okay. All right. On that note, completely out of time here, but believe it or not, elections 2019 is going to be about the state of Indian agriculture and about the jobs, and which is why we believe budget 2019 is going to be heavily focused on agriculture. Will this be palliative? Will this really be able to address the plight of the Indian farmer? Is time too little to show results? Are the big questions. And can palliatives, can band-aid solutions work, or does Indian agriculture really need, like our guests have said here, some sort of a resurrection, some sort of a corrective surgery to begin with? But thank you very, very much, Mr. Devinder Sharma, Mr. Siraj Hussain, and of course, Mr. Yogendra Yadav, for sharing your views right here on the India Development Debate. This is the budget special on India's agriculture and what the budget can do to address its plight.